Hey, so you're moving to South Florida or the surrounding area. You're coming for the beaches, you're coming for the golf, the shopping, the eating, but you're coming. Problem is you don't know where to go. Well, in this video, we are going to compare living in Jupiter, which is in Palm Beach County, Florida, to Port St. Lucie. Stick around. That's right. In this video, we are going to talk all about Port St. Lucie and Jupiter, Florida. And there's a reason that we're picking these two areas, and it's because they're really close together, but very different at the same time. And I think they're two places that a lot of people consider or should consider when they're coming down here. But before we get into that, my name's Andy Johnson with the Andy Johnson Group over at eXp Realty. And if this is your first time checking out our channel, please make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, let us know that we're doing a good job, and let you know when we're posting new content. Now, also before I get started, I gotta show you, this is why you're moving here, folks. This is what it is. I was just showing houses. This is a park in the neighborhood. I'm just living the life. Beautiful sunny day, beautiful pool, people playing pickleball back there. I'm gonna set this camera down though, so we can get into the nitty-gritty comparison of Jupiter and Port St. Lucie. Let's check it out. Hey, so listen, if this is your first time joining us, or maybe you've only seen one or two of our videos, maybe you don't know, but I love being outdoors. I really do. So I can sit in an office and record one of these, or I can sit underneath this gorgeous tree and do the same thing and give you the same great info. So I'm gonna sit outside under this gorgeous tree. So, you know, when you're coming down to a new area, as we discussed, it's very hard to figure out exactly where you wanna go. And as I mentioned, one of the reasons that we're going to compare Port St. Lucie and Jupiter is because of the vast differences between them, while only being located about 30 minutes apart. Port St. Lucie is in St. Lucie County, while Jupiter is going to kind of be the northernmost edge of Palm Beach County. Technically, you have Tequesta right above it, but Jupiter is kind of that northern edge. Now, one thing to mention about Jupiter is, you know, Jupiter is kind of North Palm Beach County, and Jupiter bumps into Tequesta, you know, bumps into Juneau, bumps into Palm Beach Gardens. So all of those kind of combine into North Palm Beach County. It's harder to me to separate out just Jupiter versus those. Whereas, you know, Port St. Lucie is Port St. Lucie. And what I mean by that is, like, if you look up the population of Jupiter, it'll tell you the population is, I can't remember, like 21,000 or 30,000 or something like that. And the population of Port St. Lucie is like 200,000. But that's not really a great view of what it actually feels like when you're in these areas. And I just want to make that clear, because again, Jupiter kind of bumps in one to another. Now, I do think they definitely have a different feel to each of them, population wise, and we'll talk about that, but I just want to be clear. Port St. Lucie has been growing at a massive rate lately. I mean, it is blowing up. And one of the reasons for that, so many of the communities in Port St. Lucie are non-HOA communities that had a lot of empty lots, and we have a lot of builders doing a lot of infill and new construction. Also, West Port St. Lucie in the Traditions area, oh my God, it is a brand new city out there, folks. The infrastructure is massive. New restaurants, new hospitals, new schools, new community after new community after new community. You know, we're not seeing growth like that in North Palm Beach County and Jupiter, Palm Beach Gardens, because truthfully right now, there's not the land that's able to be developed in the same way that they're doing it in Port St. Lucie. So seeing massive amounts of population growth up there with all of the new construction, and you're not seeing as much here in North Palm Beach County because, again, there's just restrictions in the land. Now, if you watch some of our other videos, or if you don't know, there's a new area being developed called Avenir in this area, which is straight out on North Lake. And Avenir is basically going to be a small city when it's all said and done with. You have 7 developers going in there, and there's a lot of other land being planned on being developed, but it is located much farther west, just like West Port St. Lucie is. So, you know, if proximity to the water isn't something that's very important to you, we've got that going. But those are two differences that we're seeing is really the population is absolutely booming up there in Port St. Lucie with new construction. You know, the feel of each area with that is a little tough. I mean, my personal opinion is the infrastructure, like the road infrastructure development in Port St. Lucie, really hasn't kept up with the housing. And so it can feel really, really, really congested there during rush hour. It can be really tough. And I think even heading North and south on 95 or the Turnpike, because they both run up there. If you're coming south from Palm Beach County, you know, during rush hour is way worse. It's not stop and go or anything like that, but you can definitely feel it. Whereas down in Jupiter, Palm Beach Gardens, it's much easier. And I just think that right now, the road infrastructure and traffic is much better getting around. So, you know, for me personally, if we're going for the feel of an area, how it's been developed and what's going on, you know, I like Jupiter. And hey, listen, in all fairness, right, I need to put this out there. I live in Jupiter. I live in Palm Beach, right actually in between Palm Beach Gardens and Jupiter. So I am partial to this area. I think there's some great reasons to live in Port St. Lucie, and we're going to talk about those. But I want to be fair to these two areas. So let's move on to the next thing. All right, so next, you know, one of the largest reasons that people are going to move to Port St. Lucie is cost of living and cost of real estate up there. The difference between the cost of real estate in northern Palm Beach County and Port St. Lucie or St. Lucie County is absolutely massive. You know, you have large builders in both areas, you know, Coulter, Toll Brothers, Lennar. They're literally building the exact same homes and replicated development in the Jupiter area and then in Port St. Lucie. And you can absolutely see, like, you can have the exact same house on the same size lot and see a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 cost difference depending on what you're looking at and the lot, just due to the cost of real estate. So if you're looking for the most bang for your buck as far as housing is concerned, like, hands down, you are going to Port St. Lucie. You know, if you don't have a draw to Jupiter because of how it feels or what it offers, and you're really just looking at, you know, where am I going to get the most for my money, like, don't even come to Jupiter. It's not even worth your time. You're going to come here one time and go, oh my, yeah, like, why would I spend this amount of money when I could simply go up here and spend less? As an example, you know, today, which this is March of 2025, I could hop up into a new construction community in Port St. Lucie and get you a brand new construction home, you know, at a base price of probably about $400,000. I can't even get you in a new construction townhouse in Jupiter for $800,000, all right? Just to kind of give you an idea. Really new construction, single family homes in this area in Jupiter, you're looking at $900,000 plus to get into new construction, and that's just what it is. So if you're looking for best bang for your buck in real estate, that's where it's at. Cost of living is a little bit lower as well. It's not massive there, and honestly, a lot of people that live in St. Lucie travel down to Palm Beach County to work anyway. So, you know, that's just something to consider. All right, so jobs and economy, what does that look like? Well, honestly, they're not that different in either place. Medical is obviously a major industry here. Travel is definitely another. Hospitality, if you will, with restaurant, shopping, golf and leisure is a big thing. We do have a lot more manufacturing or construction kind of taking place up in Port St. Lucie, as I just mentioned, and some of the trades happening up there. But really too, and that's something to note, I mean, trades down here, AC, electrician, getting into, you know, car repair, all of that, like, that's sorely sought after down here. A lot of the quote unquote blue collar jobs, there are not enough employees or businesses to fill the need. So those are excellent industries to be in. Something else of note, and I think worth mentioning, and we've talked about in other videos for Jupiter in this area, is how much development is going into the West Palm Beach, the downtown West Palm Beach area, which is kind of being called the Wall Street of the South. There is a ton of money coming into that area and being pumped. And listen, if you're working in downtown West Palm and you want to be close, you got kind of three choices in my mind. Either you're going to live on Palm Beach, you're going to live in downtown West Palm, which is either condos or you know, older Florida homes, which are really cool, but just kind of different lifestyle. But if you've got a family and you want a family community, you know, gated community, I'm not going to dive deep into it, but you're probably going to come to Jupiter. So we're getting a lot of people pushing that way from this happening. As I mentioned though, too, a lot of people that live in Port St. Lucie drive down to Palm Beach County or even Broward to work, but they live up there because the cost is so much lower. But you know, pretty similar job sectors in each. All right, so schools and education. you know, schools of education are always a really tough one depending on where you're coming from. In general, if you look at a site like greaterschools.org, Jupiter schools are going to rate higher than most of what you're going to find in Port St. Lucie. There's some schools that rate really well in Port St. Lucie, but it's kind of a mixed bag. I'm not giving my opinion on them. This is, you know, again, greaterschools.org. You can go check it out. So, I mean, in general, I think that people gravitate a little bit more to the Jupiter school system, especially Jupiter High School. You know, like I said, we kind of get interconnected with Palm Beach Gardens. You got Dwyer, which doesn't rate nearly as well as Jupiter High School. But in general, I'd say if we're focusing really on Jupiter, you're probably going to get higher marks for Jupiter schools. Now, the other thing about Jupiter and Port St. Lucie and just South Florida in general is you do have a lot of private school options. I've helped a lot of people that have come from other areas and just felt like the public school system in Florida is inadequate. I don't know your opinion. Everybody's got a different one, but you know, if private schools are something that you want to consider, there is no shortage of options preschool through high school. So, you know, no matter what, you're kind of set there. But I do have to go for school ratings on greaterschools.org. You're going to have to give that one to Jupiter. All right. So another thing that people always ask about, I don't know, it's never been as big of a thing for me, but it is what it is the healthcare and hospitals. I mean, look, Florida's just known for them, right? I mean, this has been a retirement state for a long time. And so, you know, we kind of mentioned it before, but medical is prevalent in both. There's multiple hospitals in both areas. There's additions being put on. There's urgent cares everywhere. Truthfully, no matter where you go, I think you're going to have a good selection of hospitals, doctors' offices to choose from. I will tell you, you know, medical down here is tough though anymore. I mean, the cost of living is a little bit less less in Port St. Lucie, so maybe that's a harder comparison for us to do. But I will tell you, getting into doctor and specialty offices in either area is difficult and can be months out. You may experience the same thing where you are. Concierge doctors are becoming very popular in this area if that's an option that you can afford. But either place, you can definitely be close to a hospital and doctor's offices, urgent care. It's going to move us right on into kind of lifestyle and, you know, just area, the overall feeling. I mean, look, like I said, folks, hands down, I'm a Jupiter guy, right? Like, I'd much rather be down here. And Jupiter's changing a lot. You know, just in the short 12 years that we've been here, I've seen a lot of growth and a different feel in the area with the population continuing to grow and coming from out of the area. But it's just such a beautiful place to live. You know, when you drive through, you know, this area and like in Palm Beach Gardens, you know, you don't have street signs in shopping centers. It just gives it a cleaner feel. You know, the neighborhoods are beautiful. A good chunk of the communities in this area are gated communities or HOAs, so they're very well maintained, and it just gives it a really beautiful feel to the entire area. Port St. Lucie, and listen, I'm being kind of stereotypical and giving you overviews, right? Because there's great areas in both, and this is just my personal opinion. You know, Port St. Lucie, you know, I personally just feel like there's a lot more like they developed a residential and then they, you know, they kind of put a shopping mall or a shopping center to service that, and then another, and then another. Now, the great thing about Port St. Lucie is if you don't want a homeowners association, it's awesome, right? And I get that. I get that. It's kind of a bummer if you want to paint your house and you've got to ask the architectural review committee if the color that you're going to choose is okay, right? So if you don't want an HOA, Port St. Lucie is a great option. You know, the other nice thing is obviously travel. So you're going to be closer to airports in Jupiter, whether you're going to West Palm, Miami, or Fort Lauderdale. The only airport that would be closer, hypothetically, from Port St. Lucie would be if you're flying out of Orlando. But again, you're talking about, like, if you were on the highway to get to the south end of Port St. Lucie West, it's about a 35-minute drive from Jupiter. So it's really pretty close. Orlando is about 2.5 hours away from Jupiter. It's about 2 hours away from Port St. Lucie, so nothing crazy. The other thing that I would mention is in Port St. Lucie. Like, if you're in West Port St. Lucie, and you got 35, 40 minutes to try and get to the beach, in my opinion, and that's not like doing it during rush hour. In Jupiter, it max 20 minutes. But again, part of that is because Jupiter just does not push as far west as Port St. Lucie does. So, you got to kind of take that in context. I do like Jupiter beaches a little bit better than Port St. Lucie too. That's just a personal thing. Port St. Lucie beaches are fantastic and beautiful. Overall, to me, just the feeling though of when I'm driving around Jupiter, it's just a little bit more comfortable. But again, in fairness, I've been here. I've got family closer to me here. So those are the types of things that kind of shape our decisions sometimes. They're both really, really great places to live, and they're both places to investigate. If you're not familiar with down here, if you haven't visited family and come down to check it out, then I think that putting both of these on your register to kind of do some research on and see what is the best fit for you is definitely something worth doing. I mean, we help people in both areas. So if you have questions about it, please give us a call. There's golf. Hey, big plus for Port St. Lucie, by the way, golf, way less expensive than some great courses. So I will real quick shout out to Port St. Lucie on that. That is an awesome thing about Port St. Lucie. But back to it, if you have any questions about either one, give us a holler, because it's a lot of information to decipher. We're talking about big geographical areas, and once you get into each area, there's lots of neighborhoods to choose from. But I'd love to talk to you, about the pros and cons of both. And, obviously you have Stewart and Hobe Sound in between those two, so they're kind of an in-between and more of a mix of both, honestly. But anyway, hey, that's why I see Port St. Lucie and Jupiter as two viable options and comparisons. Again, at the end of the day, Jupiter wins out for me for certain personal reasons, but I can totally understand why people choose to live in Port St. Lucie. And if you've already figured out where you want to live, that's okay too. Love to help you find the perfect home, the perfect neighborhood, the perfect condo, the perfect beach, the perfect golf course community for you to call home. All right, folks, thanks for checking out the video today. If you have any questions, please reach out to me or post them below. Love hearing from you. Thanks for checking out the video.